All right, guys, we're back. This is going to be the second part of the intro, which is really to go over the spreadsheets. We're going to break it down into two parts, one doing my spreadsheet, the second part doing Johnny's spreadsheet. If you've done anything with any RK stuff, this is probably going to look somewhat familiar to you. I tried to do a one-to-one copy of his dashboard and his fundamentals. And the purpose of that wasn't because I just needed to have the exact same thing. It was really more to have everything in place once so I could go through it and use it all myself, and then to kind of judge from there what I wanted to keep and what I didn't want to keep. Obviously, if it had worked, then I didn't think I needed to change too much at first, and then from there I could just adjust it to how I see fit. So I have three major spreadsheets that I use. One big difference that you guys are going to see compared to RK's with mine that's different than Johnny's is that I use Excel. And part of the reason I went with Excel is with the share radar data, it's much easier in my opinion. And I do use share radar just like RK did. And the reason why is just because it allows you to get all the information, and there's a whatever, one of the attachments or add-ons, I guess it's an add-ons what they call it, and then you can get everything pulled right in, so it's super easy. I think he used a Mac, which the Mac one, it doesn't work the same as it does with a Windows PC, and so I just used Excel. It was just easier for me, but pretty much everything's going to translate. It doesn't really matter. You could kind of do anything with either or, so whether you use Google Sheets, which Johnny uses Google Sheets, correct?
Yeah, I'm using Google Sheets.
Yeah, so if you want to use Google Sheets and go that approach, you'll probably find maybe Johnny's video a little bit more helpful than mine, or vice versa if you want to stick with Excel. Either or, you can do the same thing in either. And we did, like we said, guys, if you want to learn how to build the spreadsheets, or if you have questions about those, you can either ask during the live stream, or if you guys really want like kind of more of a long form one, we can do a whole video on it, or a few, whatever, however it works, until people can get kind of their in general questions answered. But I just thought, in terms of ease of use, the way RK had built it made a lot of sense to me. So just to show you, I use the same thing. So I have the debt column, a region column, indices, commodities, industry, and style. All these are hyperlinks. So for instance, if I'm curious on how the S&P did that day, I can click here and it will pop up over here. And then you can see, whatever you need to see based on that, and all the charts will keep going up there. If you want it, and that's a 3 weekly year one, and then I did price 1 year daily. So either or, however you want to look at things, and I have a bunch of short links over here too. So I have 3 year, 5 year weekly, 10 year monthly. So if you want to look more on like a long term thing to see how things are. I built some intraday ones, which I don't really use, but I figured it wouldn't hurt to have them. So back to the dashboard. So that's kind of this column. I used the same kind of editing. I think I did 2.5% for my when my conditional formatting kicks in, which is just green or red. Essentially, it's nothing more than that. Hold on, I just want to pull one thing back up here, and then I just made short links. So this is for that. I have the daily movers. So daily movers are 10%. And I kind of played around with the sizing for this. So if it makes more sense during the streams to play around with the sizing, because it's different when I'm either on my screen or on my laptop on how I look at these. But this just shows the 10% movers basically for the day. I have this update daily, although I don't always check it every day. And there's a few different things I added in here, because you're going to guys see later, one of my other big spreadsheets I use is the database spreadsheet. So I send everything to my database, and then some of that gets populated and pulled into these ones. So when I'm looking through here, for instance, on this column here where you'll see the date, if I've looked at it, for instance, recently, it'll turn blue, just kind of gives me a head up, hey, that was one you just looked at. And on ones that it's been a long time, you'll see that, I can tell how long it's been. This has been since January, the last time I checked this one. So that might, if it looks kind of interesting when I'm screening, maybe I'll pull that one up. Things I tend to look for when I'm screening are, market cap, obviously, percent from 52-week high, as well as the lows. I tend to buy pretty close to 52-week lows, but that really depends on the kind of the narrative around it and where pricing is. And then just some basic metrics, tangible book and regular book I use, but it's not like a die by. Cash flow from operations and simple free cash flow are a little bit more important to me. Those are ones where, especially with cyclical companies, I'm looking for cash flow from operations. Earnings can be distorted way too easily. And one thing we want to do more in our stream is go through some of the more basic finance things that we had to learn as well. So if you guys are interested or you have questions about the finance type stuff and you want to know what something is and kind of give our description of it, happy to go through those things, and I can kind of walk you through on the way I think of those things now. Like I said, I've been investing with these sheets now for about 2 years, and I have a pretty good grasp of what all this stuff means now. Like I said, I've read a ton of books, so whether it's that or just everything, there's so much helpful information out there in terms of YouTube or just Googling questions. So trying to learn all that stuff, we'll definitely work on all that. You'll see I assign my ranking, which is like a confidence score over there. A few other things I have is just margins, which I honestly don't use it all that much on this sheet. I'll use it more in the fundamental side of things. Few other quick things I have here. So this is daily gainers. I did build out the checkbox. So for instance, if I'm interested in this iRobot company, I can click this. That will send it right to my fundamental sheet, which you're going to see it's updating a little bit. That's why you'll see the flash real quick there. And it'll just put in here how many I have. So then that way I have like an idea basically of how many boxes I have checked if I want to know that. Then I can go down to my losers. So this is 10% losers for the day. So this is anything that catches my eye down here. I have the weeklies. So weeklies are in here, weekly losers. I have insiders, so I have a whole column. This pulls in from insiders. I also use what's the Open Insider? Yeah, Open Insider is great. It's super smooth and easy to use. It's very clean, especially when you're trying to pull in like tables and that kind of thing. And Excel has a great feature for pulling in tables. I'm not quite. How does that work on Google Sheets when you pull in tables?
It works well, but you just need to be careful of how much you pull in because there's a limit and it can the performance of the sheets can be hurt a bit.
Yeah, so that's also one nice thing about Excel is it's not online for me. I know you could save this all to like the cloud, but mine's saved onto either my computer or my laptop. So one nice thing is when I'm pulling stuff from online, I don't really have to worry about a ton of slowdown. It's pretty snappy, which is also a lot of tedious work in the background. I had so many errors with this thing, and getting it to up and run is a bit of a nightmare. But either way, in time, it will all work. One of the features I added, just to try to, like, if I wanted to look at peers, I can click this column here, and it'll actually bring me over to my industry filter. And this has all the different industries here, and it will pull that in and just some basic metrics for me to look at. But it compares it to all the different companies in that whatever category or sub industry it is, which is pretty nice feature I find. And once again, I still have hyperlinks up here, so I go back to my insiders, and then I have a portfolio tab, and I'll show you the portfolio for now. Know that this has to be manually updated too, guys. So when you do see this, anytime you see this in the stream, know there's not a lot of this isn't up to date, so this can change. The percentages, the things can change. I've some of these positions I've held for a long time. You guys can get an idea if you're curious on how I'm looking at the companies, whenever this was last updated, whether I think it's a hold or I'm following the narrative or I'm selling out of it, because some of these I might have sold out of already. And I'm always kind of trunching into things and trunching out. I definitely trunch out of things a lot quicker, a lot over a longer period of time, I guess, than when I buy. I tend to buy a little heavier than I do when I trunch out. But I also don't tend to buy into things unless I'm pretty confident, just because, like I said in the intro video, I hold a relatively conservative portfolio in terms of numbers, so I don't diversify very much. I tend to take pretty large positions, which is risky. I get that, but that's part of the style. We're shooting for, like I said, my bare minimum return I'm trying to get on anything is 50%. That's what I shoot for. And we'll go into kind of the thought process behind that. One day RK will get on here and he'll help us and explain to us whether we were right or wrong in our interpretation of what he thought. But well, let's hop over to the fundamental one. Once again, this should look very similar to RK's. Like I said, I did try and copy these. One difference between me, since I'm not quite the baller RK was, is I only do 10 years of data. I don't do the 20, which I find the 10 years is pretty good. It covers mostly what I want, but maybe someday I'll upgrade to 20. With some of the older companies, it's okay to have the 20 year. I'm sure that's not a bad thing to have, but I find in general 10 years is pretty good for me. I mean, if you've watched any of the RK stuff, this is very similar. I'll scroll down so you guys can see, because one thing I know is really tough is finding videos of RK's videos where he would scroll down and show you everything. So I'm happy to do that stuff for you guys, because that was just trying to find everything. And then over here I have my 1 year data, a bunch of calculations on that side. So you guys, like I said, I don't care if I show you that stuff. You can look at it, ask questions, all that kind of stuff. And then everything is conditionally formatted. The conditional formatting for RK, it was tough. I time-stamped a lot of it and would go back and forth. But in general, it just kind of works for me. I figured out just once you understand the finance, you kind of get why you would want something to pop up green or be red or not pop up, or, So mine, I'm sure, differs a little bit in terms of that from his, but I didn't really care at that point. And then if I click back to the main here, it's already frozen on me. That's great. But it'll pop back to the main area, and then that way I can kind of click around these without feeling like I'm falling behind here. Of course, the spreadsheet's lagging right now. It's probably having everything up here, so we'll probably have to deal with that at times, Johnny. But oh well, that's not the end of the world.
That's how it is.
Actually, one of the first things that Johnny and I talked about when we first met was this leverage calculator. It's like RK said, it's not foolproof, but the idea is when a company's leveraged. So let's go under. So actually, let's just go through this real quick. I have up to 20 tickers that I can pull into this. The first one's an ad hoc one, so I can just type in here and I can pull up any company. So for instance, and then if I go to the second one, I just have to upload it. I have either a quick link I can do it, or I can go over to my data ones, and if I turn on here, I can just refresh this sheet and this will populate. I had to do a few different things to get this to work. So I have it by quarter. I either have it by or yearly, because like for instance, if it's a foreign company, they might only file in America or in the US once. So you have to just change how often you want it. So if they file quarterly, and all I do is just copy and paste that value into this column here, and it will pop up. So then when I go back to C2, everything's populated, and I mean that takes seconds. So it's a tedious few clicks, but it's not the end of the world. But then I have everything pulled up here. Why I wanted to show you this one is for the leverage calculator. So you'll see here, if I'm trying to get cash flow average to be a 20%.
Scroll down a bit, Dayne. Scroll down a bit.
Scroll down.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, got to get used to that because the cameras are blocking that.
Yeah,
right there. So you guys can see here. So this is suggesting to get 20% compared to the net common overhang. To basically issue about 7 million more shares, and then those 7 million more shares get adjusted down in here. You'll see all the ones over here that say it's shares adjusted, and I don't adjust the single year, and I actually don't take this into any kind of calculation, single year stuff, because I don't care. I'm always looking at 3 or 7 year averages usually when I'm trying to judge something. Just because you'll see, I mean, what is how does it have $9 in cash flow per year and then -5? What does that mean? That doesn't mean anything to you. So, I just look at things on the longer term basis. It helps me to understand stuff better. In this, what I tend to use is I'm looking at, margins. I'm looking at revenues, definitely cash flow, looking at book. Net cash flow depends on the kind of company and what I'm kind of judging with that. And then down here, EBITDA, earnings, EBIT, I don't know, it's all just financial metrics and stuff. So the whole point is when you look at this, though, you get to a point where when I quickly see this about a company, I can already quickly judge on all kinds of things. It gives me an idea of what's going on, and then it tells me right away, is this company cheap enough, or is this company even worth looking into? Because the thing is, sometimes you'll have 20 companies on one day that you're going to look at, and if you're trying to do that in one day, it's impossible. You'd sit here for forever doing it. You'd spend hours. So you can kind of sift through, and maybe each day, if I pulls in 20 different ones that I think are interesting, maybe I'll actually delve into 3 or 4, and maybe one of those is actually interesting where I'm going to spend some real time on it. But the nice thing is, so this is the iRobot Corporation. I can click send to database, and you'll notice here it'll populate there. So this will send it over to my database, and that's where I can start to put information about it. So we'll pull that up real quick just so you guys can see what that one looks like. So this is my database. Notice that I have buy values and fair values, and just as part of my disclaimer, these buy values are all kinds of different things go into these calculations, and some of these are old. I've changed my style as I go, so if you see ones that are old or you see ones that are recent, there's a lot of reasons why I set a buy value. It could just be I'm looking at the 52-week low. It could be that, you know, I've determined it and I've actually gone through and more meticulously looked at the filing, like the last 10Q, and I really judge that's the number. So just because you see these guys, don't think these are suggestion buy values, because there's a lot of nuance that goes into that. But one nice thing here, so I can just scroll down to the bottom here, and I have about 1,000 companies in here now, and I do put little notes and things. I try to always keep notes. But then, for instance, when I'm looking at this one, I'll just add the date for the day, and then I can start going through a few different things. I can set some values, and these kind of help to trigger to me. So when I go to, one nice thing about Excel, and I know you can do this in Google Sheets. I don't know if they have a function that works as easily as this, but for instance, I can just select the top here, and once I have that selected, I can go to my data and I can filter it. And then, for instance, if I want to filter by something that's close to its buy value, I can just filter by this, and it'll reset the whole thing to go by that, and I'll know that these are the top ones that were by buy value. And like I said before, that doesn't mean anything though. So, you know, just when you're looking at this, always know there's a lot of thought that goes into this, and it's over time and things are changing. So you can't just look at this and be like, oh, it's a buy value. Most of these companies that I said buy value are low, or now it looks good, is probably because I was already saying I needed a massive discount to buy these. So you're going to see over here that those are popping up, and most of these are probably going bankrupt. That's why these market caps are so low. I mean, so these are probably not going to make it. But I think that covers most things. The other big things I have, once again, I can pull the chart up for a company. So you'll see I can pull the chart up. Insider, this is Open Insider. Owners, I use Well Wisdom. And Well Wisdom's great. I mean, you can quickly scroll down here. Sorry, RK. I know you hated scrolling. But I can check ownership. I can look at percentages. I can see what that ranking is. That's kind of important to me, is to see where the ranking is, and you know, do a few people that are value investment type firms hold this in their top few filings, or is it number 1500? Because if it's 1500, it doesn't. I don't care. Even if it's a big position, it doesn't matter. You know, it doesn't mean anything necessarily to those guys. Seeking Alpha, definitely. News, I think that just takes me to Yahoo News, or you might even just Google search it. The SEC, super important to have this, so I can go into the 10 Qs here. I love that you can just go into the interactive data here, and I can look at, you know, the balance sheet real quick. I actually really love the notes, the financial statements. This is one thing I don't know if I saw RK use much, but like, for instance, if I'm curious about someone's debt, I can just look at the debt here, and it gives you all the information. A lot of times it even tells you what years the different maturities are due, which is great to know, especially if it's something that people are arguing, or it's priced at bankruptcy now. Because if it's already priced at bankruptcy, but we have a few years before it actually is going to have to pay on those maturities, it gives you some room to kind of wiggle. I know rates these days aren't like what it was back then, but it still can just kind of give you an idea. FINRA for actually checking if it's bonds and seeing what people are purchasing at, and then just the profile. Sometimes with certain companies, I like to know, like, immediately, is it a foreign company, because the foreign risk sometimes throws you off a little bit. But that pretty much covers most of the spreadsheets. And like I said, during this, we can go through, there's a lot of macros working in the background. They're called macros in Excel, which is just kind of like some coding stuff that allows me to like jump around real quick from things. I have my data down here, so I can quickly check things if I have questions on that. And I think that pretty much covers everything for the spreadsheets for now. So this is going to be a big chunk of the stream. Is you know, probably before Johnny and I get on, we'll go through. We'll kind of find the tickers that interest us, And then from there, we'll start digging into the fundamentals, and we'll kind of shoot ideas back and forth. It's nice actually because Johnny, you pull your data in from who?
Wise sheets.
Right. So
It's a different source.
but yeah, just my point of saying that is, if one of our data's off, it's nice to be able to bounce it off each other, and just to make sure I'm like, hey, my metric says this looks crazy, and he might be like, oh no, that's not what mine says, and then we can kind of delve in just to make sure there's no errors, because the worst thing is something looks good on a spreadsheet, and you do all this, like you start getting in this whole thought process, and then you realize your data's wrong, which Share Rata just, it kind of scrapes through the SEC reports to get its information, so it's not perfect, and I get it. There's things I'm sure they could improve on, but in general, it's pretty good, and I definitely think you can get good use out of it. So, you got anything to add, Johnny, for the first part, or you think we should call us good? We can head over to yours.
Yeah, I think you've covered a lot, and I can quickly show the overview of all the sheets, and I'm sure during the streams maybe we get some questions, or we can also take initiative to show a little bit more of the technical side of actually building these.
Yeah, definitely.
But I was just wondering, like, what is your main screener for stocks? Is it the daily movers?
Daily movers is definitely a big one. So if we go back over here, I'm definitely going to find stuff here. I would say a mix between that, although I also tend to look at daily losers a lot, because when something drops 15, 20%, that's a big red flag that either something's really wrong there, or there's a narrative there, and it's getting hated for no reason. And those can be some of the biggest turnarounds. You start checking the charts and stuff, and something's been nosediving, but now it's kind of found support. The narrative looks like it could change. Those are things that are going to start to interest me. As we said, I'm a value investor originally, but there's so much that goes into pricing of things. I think in terms of trying to find a baseline value for stuff, or just to find something's cheap, comparatively to its industry, value's really good for that. And but then from that point on, there's a lot of other factors that are going to allow you to unlock value. I think the more I've been investing, I've learned more that the more important thing is, okay, well, let's say I think something's worth $10 and the share price is $5. Well, how do we get it to 10? If there's no way, there's no avenue I can see to get it to $10, then it doesn't really matter, right? Regardless of what the value is, like RK said, no one cares. No one cares. So it gets to the point that you start taking all these different things into consideration, and the longer you invest for, you start to really see when narratives change around, and you start to know what to look for. But that just kind of that's the whole point. That's to keep doing this, to keep getting better at it, to catch these things earlier, to catch these things with better timing. And when you're trying to hit at least 50% returns on things, you might have been able to get a two-bagger if you caught it at the right time and you got in heavy enough. Now, averaging up is something I'm still working on. It's always tough. It's always tough to average up. But if I think there's a real chance that the price is going to get to a certain point, and I happen to get lucky when I first bought in at a low price, but it's only gone up 50%. Well, only I know in a short amount of time, it's a great feeling, but to know that you have to be confident enough to add at some of those spots, and to watch the charts, and to watch on to buy on pullbacks, that takes a lot of basically just time investing and getting confident in yourself, and knowing when to do those things. But yeah, I'd say daily, and then definitely insiders is big. A lot of times I will find that when I start to get interested in something, I'm right there, and it's almost a triggered for a buy, but I don't have insider, or there's just not enough ownership, and sometimes that can kind of tip the scales into an actual buy. And same thing sometimes too. I know you can't always look at sells, but like if management's really selling heavily, and I'm talking a lot of people, it's at least a bearish sign. It doesn't necessarily scare me away, but I'll take it into consideration. But yeah, and similar to the other streams is no one's telling us to use any of these products. So anybody who works on this stuff, thank you so much. It works great. There's so many awesome websites out there, especially for finance, and especially as retail investors, like in general. everyone just tells you not to be a retail investor, that you can't do it. And we're here to kind of break that stigma. I think that's the goal. And so far, I've definitely been more successful. I've definitely outperformed. It's taken some time, and like I said, I've had some wins and some big losses too. And with the losses, you just focus on where you went wrong. You try to when you realize you're wrong, you try and get out as quick as you can. Don't sit there and keep averaging down and just hope for some kind of repeat, because that hurts. It hurts even worse when you're wrong then. And then when you're right, just staying confident, because sometimes stuff drops on you a little bit, and you're like, oh, I should have trimmed on that or whatever. But it doesn't matter in the long run, because if you're right in the long run and you don't end up waiting 10 years for that to come true, then you probably bought in at the right time. And some of these things, it just takes time. You can't rush it. You're not always going to find the GameStop. That's a super unique position that, the narrative changes. You had so many great insiders. You had a lot of intelligent people noticing that company, and that the style of what GameStop was in terms of a retail shop was changing. And then it's pretty rare you have 120 or 4. What did the short interest get up onto that? Was it like 140 at one point or something crazy? I mean, I'm sure at some point we'll talk about our opinion on the GameStop thing. I was there. I started tuning into RK streams. I think it was around when GameStop was at like $10 or maybe just shy of $10 a share. It was right when the narrative started to change. So I caught on pretty early, which is what got me interested in honestly a lot of this stuff. And like I said, that always led me to the thought that, well, everybody was so focused on the whole GameStop and trying to get that, the short attack. And after it had came to a conclusion somewhat, I'm not saying GameStop can't still turn around and going into the future, the guys who are still bullish on GameStop, I'm not saying that you're necessarily wrong. It's just with RK's strategy, it's tough to buy in at these levels. Maybe in 5 or 10 years the company turns around and it's definitely worth it. I'm not saying you're wrong, but it's just not. It's not really the style that I ended up coming to. And if you, like I said, if you really focus on his first 10 videos or so, that's really realize that you're getting into this stuff probably before most people. There's not a lot of us out here doing this kind of thing, which is why we kind of wanted to bring some attention to if you are interested in doing this. We obviously respect RK's opinion or I guess his ability to just kind of step away from streaming and just enjoy life. I think that was the right move, especially with who knows what kind of litigation that poor guy got thrown at him. Big money doesn't like to see some other people have the success that he had. So this is just in his spirit, just kind of continue things on, and we're hoping that we can provide the same enjoyment that we had for that initial stream that he provided. So I think we can end this here, and then we can switch over to you, Johnny.
Yep, sounds good.
All right, thanks, guys. Like I said, if you have questions going forth, you can ask them during the streams or whatnot, but we're going to end this one here just so it doesn't take too long. All right, thanks, guys.